cuidar todos nuestros ecosistemas y recursos naturales, porque sin esto no habrá futuro, y sin un mundo no tendremos futuro. Es momento de trabajar por ellos todos juntos, unidos, para proteger el universo. We are the Youth Congress for Sustainable Americas.
Hola, soy Kelly Yacira Valencia, bióloga de Arauca, Colombia, y trabajo en la Fundación Neotropical Cuencas, realizando trabajos socioambientales.
Hi, my name is Victor Rujano and I'm from Maracaibo, Venezuela. I'm the current director of CIMAS, a non-profit organization aiming to promote and defend the rights of indigenous communities and the right to a safe environment in Venezuela. My vision for a sustainable future involves all people regardless of color, race, ethnicity, sex, gender, or nationality working together for the development of our communities and the protection of our environment. We are the Youth Congress for Sustainable Americas.
Hola todos, my name is Sophia Ernst and I'm a delegate from the United States. My vision for a sustainable future is one where we can use our collective knowledge to benefit our Earth and all of us that rely on it. We are the Youth Congress for Sustainable Americas.
Okay, hello everybody, and it's a pleasure to address you in this biennial of the Americas at a decade, this decade 2020-2030, which really will require exponential delivery of the nature agenda, and youth plays a pivotal role in this, and a decade that will require also that we democratize conservation, because we need to mobilize citizenship, we need to influence policy and industry practices in order for this agenda to go to scale. So I'm Santiago Gaula, and I'm from the Nature Conservancy. I'm responsible for the Latin America region, and I'll share with you just a few slides to tell you what we are doing in the region and how we are addressing this decade, which is opportunities. And I see opportunities because I mean, it's not only because of you and all the youth and their level of awareness that we see increasing across the board globally in terms of the environmental agenda, but also because we have the international commitments of biodiversity, the climate accord, we have the SDGs for 2030, and also the institutional maturity and the urgency really to address the nature that sustains the way of life in our planet, not only for communities, but also for business and governments and society overall. So we have that, we have green technology, we have green finance. There is a ton of the building blocks to succeed this decade in place, but the urgency can't be bigger. So at TNC, the first thing we did is focusing on what are the must-win places? What are the last chance ecosystems? Those that we need to really prioritize in order to, demonstrate that a new way of sort of growing in the region where nature and people can thrive together is possible. So we focused on 10 places that, as you know, Latin America has 40% of the global biodiversity, whereas only 10% of the land coverage. 6 out of the 10 most biodiverse countries in the planet are in Latin America. So it's a region that really plays a very key role in the biodiversity and the climate agenda for this decade. So what we did at TNC is we picked those 10 places that have the highest level of biodiversity, but also that are under threat of deforestation or land degradation, right? And that have the political and citizen environment to really work programmatically from now till 2030 on really establishing a demonstration ground, a lighthouse of conservation with development. And those places are going to be quite obvious for you guys, but it's places like Baja California, La Selva Maya and the Mesoamerican Reef, Magdalena Cauca, all that, sort of water basin in Colombia, Orinoquia and Los Llanos. the Amazon, right, the biggest one, Cerrado in Brazil as well, the whole Atlantic forest and the Chaco region, more going to the south, and then Patagonia, the Humboldt Current, and the Mesoamerican dry forest as well, and the Chilean Mediterranean. Those are the 10 iconic places that we picked for TNC to focus on this decade. So when you look at the Amazon as one of the most pivotal places, and you probably heard the research from Tom Lovejoy and the work that Carlos Nobre in Brazil is doing around the tipping point, right? There's quite a lot of science and evidence that if the Amazon keeps the rate of deforestation, if it reaches to a 20% more of deforestation, that will really reach a tipping point by which the hydrological cycles of the Amazon will stop, and they're already being altered in some of the places with more deforestation, and this will throw the whole region into a savanna if we don't stop this, because the rain produced in the Amazon is not just important for Brazil or the 8 countries that are covered by the Amazon, but it's critical for the whole of South America, including Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, etc. The only exception is Chile, because the Andes act as a barrier to that humidity, to that hydrological cycle. But anyways, the Amazon stores 86 billion tons of carbon annually, right? So it's a vast carbon reserve, and it's home to 1/3 of the world's species, and more than 30 million people live in the Amazon, including 2.7 indigenous people. So this is an important thing where TNC invested very, very early on for 30 years working in the Amazon to support the voice and the power of indigenous people as the wise communities and the guardians of the rainforest. And this is an important strategy today when many of these communities are vulnerable and under threat of different policies and governments. And then the Amazon also, when you look at Brazil, that has 40% of the deforestation in the state of Pará. That's the biggest state in Brazil, the biggest Amazonian state, and accounts for more than 40% of the deforestation in the Amazon. And it's a state where, securing land rights will benefit 40,000 families that today don't have title to their own lands. And this land titling is an important protection strategy as well, because without ownership, without possession, without legal rights, it's difficult also to protect those territories, to access to credit, and also to penalize illegal deforestation, right? So one of our key strategies there is to fuel and advance the land titling in the state of Pará. And we're working very closely with the governor on a platform called Amazonia Agora, which is a platform to reduce deforestation and support sustainable local production, increasing the investment in low carbon strategies to revert the level of deforestation, but also to offer opportunities in the space of bioeconomies or in the space of any other, quite frankly, production that is made sustainably, like agriculture or even cattle ranching, when it's done with zero deforestation and full traceability. So when you look at the role of conservation in this decade, I mean, clearly people used to talk about, we need to have a zero negative impact or reduce the negative impact on the environment. And companies and countries began to measure their impact. But that's not enough. I mean, business as usual, obviously, will be like walking slowly towards a cliff. That will be a disaster. But when you look at conservation efforts, I mean, the level of action needs to not only reduce the negative impacts, but we are now on a phase of restoration, of regeneration. We need to move very quickly at reforestation or restoration through bioeconomies of these lands. Because if we don't do that, the pace of recovery won't offset the level of degradation that is still going on in the region. So I'm 50 years old right now, so I'm not a youth or a young kind of a leader at this point in my life, but putting myself in your shoes as young leaders of the biennial, I mean, I don't know, I can't imagine a more important decade to be a leader today. And I can't imagine a more important decade to initiate things or to think big, because clearly, I mean, the wind is in your sails. The wind is in your sails in terms of aligning your intelligence, your capabilities, your energy towards finding these solutions is not only incredibly urgent for the planet, but also it will see more and more risk capital or equity being invested in those entrepreneurships or those services or green technology or all the ideas, all the ecosystem of development around the restoration agenda. And of course, if you want to join TNC, that's another excellent alternative. So you need to contact us or any other big international NGO. I mean, this is a moment, this is a decade to really look for integrating, what we care about, our purpose with our profession and capabilities. All the conditions are there to make this a big decade for you guys as young entrepreneurs, right? So TNC is a little bit different, of course. I mean, we are the biggest environmental NGO in terms of assets and in terms of global coverage, and we have a role to play as well. But what we are focusing on is, I mean, there's no excuse right now to drift or drag our feet in aligning policy incentives and subsidies to restoration. I mean, the case for society, for business, for communities, for governments, etc., is loud and clear. Actually, if countries don't align their policies or create an enabling environment for sustainable development, they will begin to risk investments, and they will be also risking the capacity that they have installed in terms of industry or agriculture in their countries. It's becoming really a competitive agenda for countries and actually a national security agenda for food, water, and many of the environmental services that nature provides. So we at TNC and with the Latin American Conservation Council, that is a group of industry leaders and leaders from science and academia that helps open doors and helps advocate for this agenda. We are doubling down on these iconic places to really align the subsidies and the incentives and the penalties as well to the nature agenda. We are also advocating for industry practices. We need companies to accelerate change. We need value chains like the beef value chain or the soy value chain, to really become carbon neutral urgently, right? And all the conditions are there to make this happen. But we also need new businesses. We need these economies of biodiversity so that we can really put a value on nature and the standing forest. So that's the first thing we do, advocate for conservation. The second thing we do is we have many, many years, decades of experience in conservation. So we are aggregating knowledge, and we are also building our capabilities to support local capacity, to transfer that knowledge, to make sure we deploy those best practices so that implementation can go faster, bigger, and cheaper as well. That the return on capital employed on the implementation of conservation is super efficient. We need to become way more efficient and effective as a sector if we want to turn or move the needle in this decade. And we need to collaborate more. This is another, I don't know if it's a cultural thing or sort of a consequence of the business model of the NGO sector, which is so project-centric, but we don't see enough collaboration. There is competition for resources, duplication of efforts, atomization of projects, incrementality in the mindset of how we think about this. We need to change this. We need to really begin to collaborate and integrate those resources so that we can have a shared agenda and we can make the whole bigger than the sum of the parts. Because otherwise, that's not going to happen. You are all young, and you are together, and the biennial is a great platform for collaboration. You build relationships, you build trust, friendship, and also learn from different projects in order to capture the synergies and take those projects to scale. And the last thing we are really focusing on is on the closing the gap on green finance. And as you know, conservation, nature still requires, exponential investment to make this happen. And the instruments are there. What we need is to really create that pipeline of very solid projects so that we can begin to mobilize that finance, carbon markets, debt for nature swaps, blue bonds or green bonds. There is a suite of tools that we can use to really begin to catalyze the resources that are needed to accelerate the agenda and take it to scale. So those are the comments I just wanted to make today. I encourage you to keep connected between yourselves, to keep sharing best practices, and to think in terms of, with optimism, that this is the decade for you. This is the decade where you can really make a huge difference. And we are here to support you, and anything that we can do from TNC or the partner organizations, please reach out and we'll make our best to, empower and support your efforts. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. It's a great honor to be here today with you and address the topics of art, humanity, and sustainability. My name is Federica Donato. I am an Italian artist and designer. And since I arrived here in the US 2 years ago, I have become a more committed activist. Not out of the rage of resentment, but rather inspired by the positive attitudes that I have perceived around me. In the US, what strikes me is a genuine compassion in so many communities towards those in need. What I've experienced here is a strong sense of hope and solidarity. Keep believing. I've heard so many times in this country. Now, the pandemic has reminded us not only our individual vulnerability, but also our mutual dependence. The pandemic is a call to action. And this is why, over the past few months, I felt the moral obligation to use my personal and professional skills to combat inequality. Being aware that we are a part of a larger we, I decided to set up Art for Humanity, a platform for social engagement that calls for action to impact and improve the lives of disadvantaged people through art, culture, and education. I felt the urge to share the stories of vulnerable communities in our country and around the world, because stories are powerful. Brains operate in pictures, and a story has the ability to paint a picture in the mind of another individual. And I believe that it's by watching, by immersing our lives in other people's lives, and by truly listening to them, that we can empathize and use our moral imagination to better understand what needs to be changed and to envision the full range of possibility that we have to become agents of positive change. And in the virtual world of today, we can do this from Bogota to Dakar, from Washington, D.C. to Kathmandu, from Rome to the refugees camps in Greece, as I've done in the past few months. Everything we do, we want to challenge the status quo. We want to inform and inspire. We are setting up beautiful cultural and artistic events. We are producing nicely done items that feature engaging messages. We are creating networks, making connections, and engaging people. because when we act together, we amplify our strengths. Why using art for this mission? Because art is the one language we all speak, because art has the power to evoke feelings and emotions trigger actions. Art has the power to promote ideas, and ideas are the most powerful and sustainable vehicles we all have to drive changes and improvements. How can we make our humanity progress in a sustainable way? United versus divided, open versus closed, we versus I. Our actions need to be bold and transformative. There is certainly an awareness of the greening poverty that so many experience daily around the world. And yet sometimes we say that our efforts to combat poverty and disease do not and cannot work. There are some places beyond hope. The certain people and regions are condemned to endless cycle of suffering. We need to put those myths to rest. We need to set aside the skepticism. Poverty, exclusion, racism are choices, our collective choices, and it's upon us to change the narrative. This is why I want to share with you my passion for the United Nations 2030 Agenda and my enthusiasm for how the 17 Sustainable Development Goals can impact our shared humanity. And let me emphasize how particularly meaningful it is to be here today at the Denver Biennale, an organization that strongly promotes the dialogue about the interdependence between art and humanity. While the imperative now is to implement these agreements, it is important to recall that the Sustainable Development Goals are not just an additional plan for our society, nor do they replace the specificity and detail of existing international agreements. Those goals are a shared vision of an interconnected world. There are no borders, no colors, no diversities, no religions that should keep us divided. We are much more united by our common destiny than we are divided by our different culture and ethnic identities. An impoverished child in a distant slum or in a neighborhood not far from here is just as equal, as worthy as any of our children, as any of us, as any head of government or leader around the world. What do we need to do to get there? We should fill the gap between disadvantaged communities and privileged ones, a gap made of inequalities that keep us divided. This is a humiliated humanity, and we should release it from shame and humiliation. Who wants to live in a society of injustice, division, and sorrow? What is the future of our shared humanity if we don't take care of it today? We can enact essential changes, but we have to prioritize this effort. We need to make a collective shift in mindset that drives a moral renewal through our personal engagement, both at local and global level. Let's start this process of healing. As President Obama said in one of his most beautiful speeches, I want to insist that supporting development is not charity, but is instead one of the smartest investments we can make in our own future. After all, it is a lack of development when people have no education and no jobs and no ops, a feeling that their basic human dignity is being violated, that helps fuel so much of the tensions and conflict and instability in our world. And of course, we all know how difficult the task is and the huge challenges ahead of us. Poverty, growing inequality exists in all of our nations, and all of our nations have to work on this. And that includes here in the United States. We live in a world of such profound and rapid changes that no one country can stand alone. The global interlinked threats and challenges require everyone to share responsibility and contribute to a common vision. But development is threatened by inequity. When poor children are more likely and get sick and die than children in wealthy neighborhoods just across town, when rural families are more likely to go without clean water, when people face discrimination because of their ethnic or religious identities, because of gender or sexual orientations, that holds all of us back. No one should be left behind just because of where they live or what they look like. We should be aware of the danger of remaining divided. So far, we are not all in this together. Development is threatened by old-fashioned attitudes, by prejudice, ignorance, and fear, all stemming from miseducation. Access to education is the key. Our political or religious orientations don't matter. The big divide is open versus closed. In too many places, girls are less likely to be in school than boys. Globally, women are less likely to get a job or have a career than men. One of the best indicators of whether a country will succeed is how it treats women. When women have access to education, they are empowered. They have a choice. They can have a job or not. They can contribute to the flourishing of their local societies. Gender equality makes our societies healthier and more prosperous. So we must invest in quality education for all, with a focus on women and girls. We must do our part and set them free from old-fashioned beliefs. We should understand that when we support disadvantaged communities, we uphold the ideal of collective dignity. We elevate our shared humanity. We need to rethink what is a successful society. We must start a collective project that requires a cultural transformation, a shift that the pandemic, although terrible, might favor. We need to emerge from this global emergency with a new direction. Awareness is just one step. Being empowered will make all the difference. The UN 2030 goals speak to many common concerns of countries at all levels of development, whether unemployment, inequalities, injustice, violence, government mismanagement, threatening natural disaster, and climate change challenges, like industrial pollutions, degradation of the terrestrial ecosystems, and loss of biodiversity. These challenges are full inclusive, so the solutions must be as well. Sustainable development cannot be achieved unilaterally by one country alone. And probably one of the most relevant affirmations from the UN agenda is that if a significant economic or social group is left behind, our development is not sustainable. That is why we need to work together to find solutions that are sustainable and durable, and that recognize our interdependence with each other and with all life on Earth. We all must become ambassadors of change, built on the fundamental concept of human dignity. We grow when we extend and expand our potential. We should extend our sense of possibility and willingness to enact significant changes to the status quo. We can start from our local communities. Our personal and professional knowledge, skills, resources, and connections should be committed to combating injustice and making our society more balanced and equitable. The ultimate goal is to help build an interconnected society where people focus on global community interdependence, on serving others, and on restoring a lost sense of humanity and justice. With the unlimited potential of our personal and professional skills, we can be fully engaged in decreasing social and economic disparities. We can build a society of I care. I envision a world in which people wish not only to be active donors, but are also able to invest their time and commitment to empower others. We must find a way to a politics of the common good. We need to put in place mechanisms that can give voice to the unheard, define their needs, and find ways to address them. The principle to leave no one behind involves the society at all of its essential levels: citizens, private and public institutions, the business community, and the political class must contribute to paving the way to realizing the 2030 agenda. We should reach out to local authorities to ensure coherence and learn to work with civil society, corporations, academia, philanthropy organizations, volunteer groups, and others. And I believe that the Denver Biennale is an organization that can really assist in this worthy effort, especially in our beloved American continent. Indeed, local governments and municipalities are at the core of the required actions. Global and national policies must be guided by the realities and needs of local communities and partnerships. Reaching these goals is important, but even more, it is possible. Progress will depend on the actions we choose to take. For inspiration, look at cities in Germany. Look at states and the cities that have decided to become green. Look at municipalities that have decided to care for their poor and address inequalities, and subnational states that have their own development cooperation. Look at New Zealand. We can definitely choose to be more ambitious in our efforts to effect significant change. Let's bear in mind that inclusiveness is not just a matter of ethics and equality. Our commitment to leave no one behind is also about making sure the full range of knowledge, creativity, and solutions that the diversity of people worldwide have to offer. This has to be acknowledged and embraced. Hence the importance of meaningful interactions with small and large communities. We can establish a sustainable flow of relationships at any level, an organic movement of mentors directed to revitalize our global society. The private sector can play an important role by translating profits into sustained economic growth and environmental protection, and integrating sustainability information into the reporting cycle. In other words, while philanthropic actions by business and individuals play an important role, the real impact will not come from what they do with their money, but from how they make their money. We have an incredible, powerful, and sustainable resource, youth. We are raising the next generation and need to bear in mind that the power of education is the only way to create healthier and sustainable knowledge-based societies. We should reach out to young people and make them excited about the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be the whole generation of change agents who can advance this critical agenda. We must encourage and train present and future generations to be more conscious of our personal role to become warriors of love and justice for the betterment of our society. We need to provide them with more honest versions of our history. They need to be more aware of how they live, where they work, what they buy, and so on. We have to prepare them to be committed to grow and live with a strong sense of purpose. Art for Humanities actions are very much focused on youth and education. I am so pleased to be working with the young, talented dancers of Alma Movimiento, the dance company of Teatro Mayor Julio Mario Santo Domingo in Bogotá, Colombia. Alma exemplifies how equal access to quality education is crucial to boost the development of vulnerable communities, to reduce disparities and division, and to promote well-being for all. Coming from diverse communities of Colombia and also from Venezuela, the members of Alma Movimiento dance with a strong sense of purpose. Humble yet determined, vulnerable yet strong, they are already committed to do their part and return to the world what they are taken from it. From an anthropological perspective, Alma Movimiento is a wonderful social-cultural experience. It is a network of social interactions that impact knowledge and beliefs, social behaviors and values. Let's show the future generations the real boundaries, that are not those limiting our territories. Real boundaries are the limits that we need to set in order to protect human dignity and our planet. We should tell our children that a successful society is an equitable society. A just society is the result of the respectful, cooperative, and fair behaviors of our communities. We need to change the current narrative and start educating our children about new and different priorities. We must recover a lost sense of humanity. It is a matter of personal conviction. Just one person or even one family or community may seem too small to make a difference, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. Everyone's contributions inspire hope. To conclude, I want to read you a part of the 1940 Message for All of Humanity from Charlie Chaplin's famous speech in the film The Great Dictator. I hope that it will inspire you as it inspired me. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone, if possible. Jew, gentle, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there is room for everyone. And the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned man's soul, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and we feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and will be lost. The airplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in man, cries out for the universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future, and all age a security. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. I wish to thank the Denver Biennale and its sponsor for their commitment to this shared vision of humanity. Thank you for your generous invitation. I greatly look forward to future discussions and to meet you in person very soon. Thank you.
What's up, y'all? This is DJ Cable and Alchemia, sending much love, peace, and blessings to everyone out around the world who's starting to get more involved with environmental action. What we do, we're culinary climate action activists, energy wellness practitioners, and really we take it to a whole nother level. We represent via the Earth Foundation. And what we're trying to do right now is actually show people a different way of how to get involved with the planet by growing your own food. We have an initiative to actually teach people not only through music and art for social change, but really how to interact with, the earth. So let me break it down. Tell them why we do this.
Yeah. So, our bodies are the earth element, right? So I think a lot of the time we separate ourselves from nature when indeed we are nature. So it starts with, again, a shift in mindset, our beliefs, which becomes our results, and at the end of the day, right? So if we don't like the results that we have now, we're gonna have to plant different seeds.
True indeed. So we utilize the method of environmental hip hop, and not only just that, but like through the style of what Alchemia is bringing, it's like really showing people how to get connected to the source, energy and spiritual alignment, and taking that to that level of artistic ability. I think it's a whole nother perspective. The Biomimics album was an album that was delivered to people in the form of seeds.
So basically, our initiative right now is just seeding urban gardens in these times when right now I think food security is imperative, right? Food security is imperative. And also I think that in addition to us taking a closer look at our food in terms of where it's coming from, how we're growing it, and honestly making sure that we're able to feed our communities, with our immunity being under attack, we can see just from all levels of why we do what we do with the planting of the seeds.
There it is.
I got so much seats, I got no more land. Pull up on your block in that veggie van. Keep my broccoli local like I always did. Give me a bucket or two, watch my co-plan in the streets. I got so much seats, I got no more land. Pull up on your block in that veggie van. Keep my broccoli local like I always did. Yeah, my veggies so fresh, fit so fresh, garden so clean, grown with the best, rose in my hood, throwing up the X, dirt stay wet, flex, 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 got a pocket full of seeds, what's next? Farmers markets always gonna have the fresh, look at the way that they eat, look at the way that they eat, you ain't finished your plate, why are you falling asleep? Never too late, be who you needed to be. Meet me out in the wood, ready to plant in the tree. Homie, I'm good. Big green growing, big green. Sprout that life. 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 Big green growing. Sprout that life. Big green growing. Sprout that life. Big green growing, big green. Sprout that life. Big green growing. I'ma make you think twice when you pull up on the corner store. What's the shelf life of your food? They say, I don't know. Why you eat that processed food? They say, I don't know. Why you never try the fresh juice? They say, I don't know. I got gold grapes with the gold carrots. Rolling tower gardens, root romaine lettuce. Rolled on yams, ASAP, always for the fam. Played it up like a chef. Post one for the gram like. Green growing, big green. Sprout that life. Big 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 green growing. Sprout that life. Big green growing. Sprout that life. Big green growing, big green. Sprout that life. Big green growing, big green. Sprout that life.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Natalia Cardona. I am an illustrator and industrial designer from Colombia. Right now, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and I just wanted to share a little bit of my experience and like my story and how I'm using actively like illustration and design to communicate certain topics, specifically like some of them about sustainability and climate justice through like a visual language through illustration. So first of all, I just wanted to address the fact that I had like basically most of my upbringing first in Colombia, specifically in the cities of Bogota and Pereira. And Pereira was like the city where I like pretty much spent most of my childhood, and I had the fortune to be raised in a sort of rural community in which I had a very close relationship with nature, in which like I had access to bamboo forest. I was always in contact with certain like sort of endangered species or just like endemic from that area. I was able to go in hikes to mountains, to visit lagoons, to just like bathe on like the richness of biodiversity that Colombia has. And that certainly, like that's something that I've always carried with me, and that has like really inspired my work through like all my life. And I feel that that was like the first step in my upbringing that actually made me connect to nature in a way that not only like made me inspired by it, but also made me deeply care about the future of all this like natural environments, about the future of this endangered species, about the future of the communities that lives in these areas. So I also want to address the fact, before we continue, that I was raised in a very privileged position. So right now, like my point of view, it's from a privileged space, which I'm completely aware of. But I just wanted to put that as a footnote because obviously I am not, like, my family has never been sort of like directly impacted by climate injustice, but I do have the notion of like how important nature is because of how close I like grew like into it. So I just wanted to like clarify that and say that this like really deep care that I feel for nature has been like a very important drive to be more involved in certain like activities or just like things that will like make a positive impact in the fight for climate justice. So I also want to say that when I was in my undergrad, I had a background in industrial design where I was able to have a certain education about sustainability and design and how to create like innovation towards a more like environmental consciousness that was able to make people create certain like products that was like better for generations to come. So with that in mind, I started like drifted apart from industrial design, and I basically started like illustration. Basically, when I started illustration, I found in that industry a place in which I could use visual communication to not only express myself, but also give other people voices. And not only other people voices, but also giving nature a voice in a way. And I think when I started illustrating and I started drifting into these topics about how I relate like personally with nature, I started doing it very like in an unconscious level, I think because of that upbringing and my like close relationship with nature. But the more I started doing it, I realized that there was actually a big opportunity for change in which I can use my own images and my own like creative work in the advantage to work towards this kind of like climate justice fights. So I wanted to like address the fact that with illustration right now, what I try to do is in the like on a very like primary step is try to understand like giving this like giving certain situations that are related to climate injustice or racial injustice that are like very hard to process sometimes because of how catastrophic they are. And I use illustration to, first of all, make it like make sense for myself and try to communicate that idea to others. And in that sense, I want to pull out an article about called "The Science of What Makes People Care," that it's written by Anne Cristiano and Annie Neyman. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your names right. Which was published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, which says that there's like 5 principles for making people care about certain things. And those principles are: 1, join the community; 2, communicate in images; 3, invoke emotion with intention; create meaningful calls for action; and 5, tell better stories. And I feel that this article is very useful into what I feel that I can like personally do with illustration towards making people care. I feel that specifically my illustration work, and this is something that I've been like sort of questioning myself for a very long time. It's like, why do I illustrate, and why do I try so hard to communicate my feelings into images? And I think that the most like relevant answer for myself is that I want to communicate empathy, and to communicate empathy with one another, to communicate empathy with nature, to communicate empathy with those people that we usually like turn our face to, or we are not like usually in the right mindset to like try to put ourselves into their shoes. So with that in mind, I feel that I try to communicate empathy in the way that if I try to embed like all these feelings that I feel, I will be able to make others feel those feelings as well. And in this article, I thought that it was very interesting, the fact that when they say join the community, that's why I'm saying that I started using illustration on a way to try to make sense of all these things. And that way I was like slowly approaching this community and trying to unfold all this like climate issues and like racial injustice that was happening, and trying to make it like making have a sense in my mind, I guess. After that, like I feel that with the idea of communication with images, illustration is very like impactful in that way, because once I processed all this like sort of abstract things, I can like sort of ground them in the way of images to make people understand them in a more concrete way. This article, it also says that most of the time people pay more attention to information when they make them feel good, and when they make like a positive impact, like, and make like a connection with the feeling of awe. And I feel that that's what I want to transmit all the time with my images. And I guess like I would like in this point to like put an example of like my work on the images that you guys are probably like looking at right now. I had I'll say not opportunity, but I had an experience this year that was like very moving for me personally, and was the fact that since I'm living here in Oregon, I lived through the wildfires that were happening on the beginning of September. And that was like very hard for me to comprehend, because I have never lived through that. And again, I'm talking from a point of privilege. And I think on that occasion, I was like completely immersed on this like really catastrophic situation that put me into the shoes of like many people that lived through the situation, probably through all their lives. And I had to endure the fact that our city was covered in smoke for many days, at least like 2 weeks. We couldn't like breathe, we couldn't go outside. And in the midst of it all, I turned into art, and I created this piece of my house being completely surrounded by orange smoke. And that was the way for me to understand that situation. And then I was able to communicate that situation to others through images. And I feel that that image has such like a powerful emotion of like, I guess in this occasion it was not a positive emotion, but like a very like impactful emotion of like, this is happening, this is how it feels to be surrounded by this like horrible, scary thing that it's like smoke and wildfires, and how that people that are not living here in this moment are understanding the situation from my point of view. But yeah, in other like examples that I'm giving of my work, I will say that most of them, excluding this one, are always trying to communicate a positive feeling of empathy, of awe, of happiness, of community, and like with the fourth principle that this article mentioned of creating meaningful calls of action and telling various stories, which is the fifth, I feel that I have two like good examples in the images that I'm sharing with you. And it's one, the poster that I did for Amplifier for their call of art for this year, which talks about building like communities and communities with like mental health as a priority. And the other one is an image that I created for a for the design week here in Portland for Outlet, which is a risograph printing shop, that they were doing a fundraiser art show, and we were all invited to create pieces that were not only gonna like convey all this like messages of like we are fighting for racial injustice here in Portland, but it was also towards raising funds for 5 different organizations that are fighting racial injustice locally in Portland. So that was like a good example of how we can turn like art pieces into calls to action for a better like chance to make an impact, if I could say. And with the poster for Amplifier, I feel that it was like a really being affected for different situations right now, especially for COVID, and that was like the main goal when I designed that poster. It was to convey the fact that even if we are not together physically, we are still together in the distance, and that's why the poster says support systems goes the distance, because that's how I felt when I made that poster. I am very far away from my family, from my friends, but still I feel that we're all together when we like actively are trying to help each other. But yeah, I feel that other than that, illustration in general, it's like a really, really important tool for people to just like trying to visually communicate something. And it often does that when things are communicated on a metaphorical way, on an image level way, people really like understand these topics and are easier for them to resonate with them and try to actually make them either change their mind if they don't think your cause is worth fighting, or make people who are interested to be even more interested and call them to action, and try to make people more aware of all these issues that are going on around us, and make people care, and make people care about each other, and make just keep sharing the feeling of empathy that I want to convey with my work. Thank you so much.